clans. That's what I'm calling genealogical studies. And these give me, or they will give you a bit of a nuanced picture. So clan and the family histories tell us a better story of origins than the tribe or other variants that we use, like society, community, ethnic group, ethno-linguistic, and so forth. What else? I'm using what the clans are telling me about for volcanic activities, how the volcanic activities influenced their movement, either from the north or from the south. And so the footprints that we see on those rocks can be used as source and as evidence of very early migration, okay? And with that information, I also want to say that, or to argue that there is a bit of heterogeneity within the community. The clan talks about diverse sources of origin, not from the north, not from the south. They came from all over the place. And the question is, how did they become Kamba? Early ethnographers told us that the Kamba were the most and the purest Bantu group. They came from one place, the Congo, and they were the purest. But what I've gathered from this study of footprints and the place of volcanism tells me that the Kamba have accumulated huge wealth of Bantu and non-Bantu speaking people. And so this word, which translates as rock, tells us that the Kamba look like a manga thread that rope together multiple ethnicities. And I think this argument will be applied elsewhere, that the groups that we call tribes are more than what they are. And so my findings, and don't ask me too many questions because I have to fly and do the research, okay? But I have plenty of information to answer your question. But it's very raw and preliminary. One of the things that historians or anybody has ever talked about is that heterogeneity of the Kamba and all other people. What do they comprise of? My findings so far show me that by the time these people arrived in Eastern Kenya, they were not called the Kamba. They were called Eva. And this word translates as nephews. So nephews of who? This was the larger group from Tanzania, and it merged with another which has run out, which is extinct, called Anoka or Anoka, and they are from Noka Mountains. I will be providing maps to show where those places are. That group was seen last time, and it was speaking a different language, 1935, 1945. Another one based on northern mountains called Akitu, Adaisu, and the last one is Angulia, right? All those are not in Bantu, and so the ethnography is questionable. And by the way, I didn't mention that I will have some students helping me to read some large passages. And so let me talk about my fourth goal, which is now to turn back after I tell the story of where the Kamba came and how diverse they are and they were. I will examine their migration now from Eastern Kenya and settlement elsewhere. And this dispersal shows that there is a lot of things that happened. And the diaspora, I would like to see why transition from decentralized structures to centralized structures occurred. The Kamba have never had chiefs, but wherever they moved, they created the chiefs and the chiefdoms. And they did not transfer those structures back to Eastern Kenya. Why? What explains that? The Kamba founded 100 and that, sorry, I skipped something, several clans among the Taveta, Taita of Kenya. These live close to the Kilimanjaro and the coastal area, but they never centralized there. Why did they centralize elsewhere? On the slopes of Kilimanjaro, they founded 113 clans of what became Shaga. And out of those, they created 110 chiefdoms, which remained with the name Kamba until the 19th century. Why did they do that? Why did they do that among the Shaga, but not among the neighboring Taveta? In Western Central Tanzania, immigrants and particularly hunters created clans among one group called the Sukuma, but they did not create any clans in the other, called the Nyamwezi. They founded 21 clans, chiefdoms among the Nyamwezi, but none among the Sukuma. So I'm trying to understand how centralization occurred, and I think my time is not very good, Jim. So, okay, good. I will go ahead and explore causes of dispersal towards the diaspora. Why? And here is almost my thesis. Many people have always, whether historians or ethnographers and anthropologists, are tied to the Kamba unrest to droughts and famines, and pre-colonial hunting and long-distance trade, things like witchcraft and internal conflict. But here is where I'm arguing that these people are moving as a result of volcanicity or volcanism, whichever term you give it. All the places they have inhabited experience severe volcanism, seismicity, and that kind of thing. Scholars have not tied those natural activities to migration. And I think I will be doing a good job here. The Kamba talk of having come from the Cameroon, Nigeria area and moved towards Lake Tanganyika. I've not found any footprints within that corridor from Cameroon to Tanzania, nothing. But I'm sure I will find some. The first place they talk about is in Unyamwezi, which I have just mentioned under this slide. And they talk of a place called Kitunda, the Red Rock. And the footprints of their ancestors are still on that rock. I haven't seen any image of the Red Rock, but my grandfather, Mulwa Maidya, some of my relatives are listening, lived here for 35 years. And he told me about the Red Rock. I will find out this summer. They are from the Red Rock. I argue that they were chased away or they were driven out of the Red Rock by eruption towards the coast of Tanga and Kenya. And here we find another or several footprints. And one is called the footprint of God. People believe, particularly among the Minjikenda, that the footprints we find on the rocks were made by God himself. And then they moved to Kilimanjaro. And we find more footprints. And the person on this image is one of our faculty, Professor Cynthia Lutica's peers. She teaches in geology, and I will be in the right company of this group, right? she is joining us on Zoom, all right? They have been studying these footprints since 2009. I can use that, yeah, and it's a very sweet information to build my historical account. One thing is clear. Okay, there is a problem with using geological data for historical purpose. It tends to say these footprints don't belong to historical times. But why are the Akamba claiming that this footprint belong to my ancestor? That doesn't. These footprints, we don't know who was here. I think I will do a better analysis there. One thing that is clear is the footprints were made shortly after lava eruption. After the things come down, that's when the footprints were done. I think Cynthia and others will be able to help us date these footprints if they have not done it already. I have criticized their work, not Cynthia's, but geology in general. Archaeologists are also helpful, and I hope Cameroon Goki, the Department of Anthropology, is joining us also on Zoom. We have been talking about this. So there are a lot of people across Kambas who are interested in what I am doing. Hey, the Kamba followed the general Mbandu path from very dangerous places in Cameroon, Congo, and Rwanda area with what we call killer lakes. And I'm asking myself, is there any connection between what happened in those killer lakes and Bantu migration, and in specific, the Kamba? I have one of my able students online. I hope she is here, Naomi White. Naomi, are you there? Can you unmute her if you can see her? I'm sorry, I forgot that part. I can't see Naomi. Can you hear me, Ralph?
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Okay, go ahead and read for us this passage. August 21st.
August 21st, 1986 was a busy market day in the village of Lower Nios, Cameroon. And most people that evening went to bed early. The night brought a strange sound, like a distant explosion. When a few people awoke the next morning, they discovered the apparently unharmed corpses of people and animals lying everywhere on the ground. Not even insects had been spared. More than 1,700 people died that night. In the first days after the catastrophe, everybody struggled to understand what happened. Rumors of secret government experiments, strange, quote unquote, invisible superweapons, or even a series of quote unquote atomic bombs soon started to circulate.
Thank you, Ralph. Stay tuned, don't unmute, don't mute yourself, there will be more. So this happened in 1986. These other legs also did the same thing. So the question I'm asking out of this was, I will keep, good. All right. The question I'm asking out of this was what? Let's read the second passage, okay? Sorry. Ralph, go ahead and read that. So that's the leg, and this is what we scientists found out much later, okay? Go ahead, Ralph.
Okay. The true killer was identified as a strange volcanic phenomenon associated with the nearby Lake Nios. The lake is located in the Cameroon volcanic line, a 950-mile long chain of volcanoes and crater lakes extending from the Gulf of Guinea into Cameroon in Nigeria. Whatever the reason, as soon as the cold, gas-rich water from the bottom reached the surface an explosive degassing of 1.6 million tons of carbon dioxide occurred, forming a 160 feet high cloud. The invisible and odorless carbon dioxide was heavier than normal air, and the cloud descended quickly from the slopes of Nios and filled the surrounding valleys, covering the villages with a blanket of toxic carbon dioxide. Some survivors later reported of a strange smell, a white, translucent cloud, and family members who were eating one moment and in the next had tumbled on the floor, never to wake again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ralph. And this event had taken place 1994 in those killer lakes. People sleep, they wake up dead. Frogs, mosquitoes, everything dead. As a historian then, I'm asking this question, and I hope you will help me think through. Did this happen before? How many times? How did it affect Bantu migration, if it ever did? Scholars have never raised that question, and they have never answered that. I will be using my award to answer those tough questions. And I will be using multiple sources to investigate, all right? There was a sense of urgency. If we take all this information away, we understand the other sources, we understand that every time a migration occurred, there was a sense of urgency. And this is reflected in the rock footprints, in the fossilized footprints that we can find in the, what we call the red rock, what I mentioned earlier, the Mount Kilimanjaro area, and so forth, okay? Around Mount Kilimanjaro, which I told you that the Akamba moved after the red rock, there are other footprints which since you have been studying, and the tradition says that the Akamba left this place, specifically a place called Keni, which means little light, and moved to Taita Taveta and on to the place we are calling Akamba now. And so the question I'm asking is, did they leave Kilimanjaro because of volcanism? Historians have not told us that yet. Did volcanism have anything to do with their flight north to the other mountains that I'm going to tell you about? And Rab, go ahead and read that passage. This will be the last one. It's from a very able American traveler called Main French Children. Go ahead.
There was a village on the mountain where the crater lake now swells and gurgles, and that during a volcanic eruption of Kilimanjaro, the people and their herds and poultry were blown into midair, and that their spirits still hang in space without a home, that the moaning and soughing of the wind through the trees, the strange rustling and mysterious noises caused by the reverberation of the rocky cliffs surrounding the lake, proceed from the spirits of these poor people, their cattle and poultry. Although fish are abundant in this lake, the natives could not be induced to taste them.
Yes, yes. These natural events are associated with prehistoric times. Although there are some prehistoric, there are some well-known historic eruptions. But if you read that legend, you understand that it is still in our memory. And it happened, for example, the creation of the lake I'm calling here Shala occurred during a memorable time, a time people can still recall, right? So from there, they moved to another mountain called Shulu. And this is in Akamba now. And we are told that in tighter area, they were driven by drought and a famine. And I'm arguing here that that famine was not as a result of drought. It was as a result of the disruption that came with the volcanism. And that is very clear in oral tradition and non-documentary sources. The only problem is that historians have not yet put the cheese in the right crackers. And I'm here to do that. All right. And so I believe or hypothesize that the Akamba became Kamba here on this mountain. And it's a mountain that has seen lots of eruption in recent years. I will be talking about that soon. Let me move quickly. The eruption of Chulu forced the Kamba, now the Kamba. The other group was Eva, but in Chulu, they collected so many other groups and they formed a community that began the language that is spoken now. What else? There are places on that mountain called Bisumbu, and this translates as hot pot. Even though people will not talk about eruptions when you hear about hot pot, you understand that that's either a hot spring or a place that was erupting all the time. They moved from that in Bisumbu to another mountain associated with their myth of origin called Nzauli. And here you find footprints on the rocks. And these are now very clear footprints of humans and their livestock. And we can make interpretation of their economic lifeways from what we see on those rocks. One of the rocks is called Mulataivia, or the footprint on the rock. And the clan that occupies the place today goes by the same name, okay? And so on and on across the area we call Akamba, there are so many footprints. The last one is in my home area called Yambu. And the footprints are said to be that of my clansman called Mongote. But other clans have also said, no, he wasn't a member of your clan, he was ours. I won't go to those clans and they would, no, he did not belong to you. That sort of thing. That's good for me as a historian to do interpretation, to do analysis. Back to the Akamba diaspora. The Akamba, and I'm finishing, the Akamba diaspora is significant in many, many ways. First, it shows clearly that the term Kamba was born in the Chulu Hills. This Chulu Hills, which is still active, was a melting pot of ethno-linguistic elements that resulted to the identity and the language and the people that we call the Kamba. By merging both Bantu speaking, Cushitic speaking, these are languages that are spoken in Africa, and so many into one. Linguists have not done a good job. My former supervisor, Thomas Spear, is listening. And he has trained me well. I wouldn't let him down. But he engaged a number of linguists to study things in East Africa together. But I believe that the linguists have not done things well because they rely on historians to make their interpretation of things instead of historians using what linguists have gathered. So when they study Kamba, they don't see these branches of non-Bantu. And I will be interrogating and pushing some that I have identified to come with me on this journey. This place shows that then diaspora also began here. This was the place of dispersal. If I come to my last point, then diaspora reveals nuanced history. Well-known clans are supposed to have moved from these mountains. And we know, sir, in the Shaka, which I mentioned, one of the ancestors was called Mosei. That's typically Kamba name. And a plain, an entire plain called Useri, is named after him. From him came several chiefdoms whose royal families we can follow. Another was called Urio, from whose place name Guru comes from. And this Guru was actually the name of Chulu. So I will be asking linguists to help me understand these words and how they came about. The last one was called Moran, and he gave the name Maran. Let me, I think, one more, and we'll be out of here. Okay, conclusion. Again, back to Makan. The history of the Kamba peoples is written on their landscapes, and multiple sources affirm their passage along the migration path where their bombearers' footprints still exist. And I think if we can tie history, oral tradition, and nature, we can understand this past better. The second last thing is that using the diaspora, why it moved, and asking when it moved, helps me to challenge the view that the Kamba were born between 1500 and 1800. The pioneer historians talk about that period. I argue that this particular time, the Kamba were well and thriving. Then diaspora was already in existence. Ukambani was already a well-known place in all parts of the continent. And I will skip my proposal, my framework, come to my last thing. I think by doing that, I will be deepening our understanding of ethnic transition from decentralized to centralized states. And out of the book that I will present to you, I will add more nuance to the understanding of diaspora. How are they formed and identity in East Africa? When people moved from Ukambani to the coast, which I'll show on the map, to the mountains, they ceased to be Kamba. They maintained Kambaness, but with this time they formed new languages and new people. So what happened? But the most intriguing part of my study of the Kamba, I think from the book, I will be using the diaspora, I will be telling the story from another angle that we have never been told. When were the Kamba born? When were the neighboring Kikuyu born? Meru, other people farther away, the Nyamwezi, the Chaga, the Minjikenda, when were they born? And my sticking point is simple, that they were not born recently. They were not born between the Portuguese Maritime Empire and the British Empire, which rose in the 19th century. They are people of great antiquity. And we can tell that by studying their landscape. Thank you very much.
Okay, we don't have much time, but if anybody has a question, either speak up on the Zoom, unmute and speak up, or if anybody here would like to ask Jeremiah real quickly. And can you get the gift ready? Okay, if anybody does have anything, speak up on Zoom, but if not, I want to present Jeremiah with a gift while we're all here together. And then I would just say, please eat up the rest of the food that is here. We've got the room for another 15, 20 minutes. So sit around and fellowship. Jeremiah, on behalf of the department, we present you with the traditional Greer
Oh, thank you.
present and a card,
Thank you so
and
much.
look forward to seeing what the next 3 years will bring. So
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, let's get a few photos.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah. I have the family join.
yes, yes, come up, let's get a family photo too. Good, thanks.
Yeah, please. Wow. Thank you, Lieutenant. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Go ahead. Wow. Hey, Jim, I wasn't expecting this one. All right. Okay. Go ahead, Renee. Okay. Wow. Thank you. See? That's what wise.
Got lots of congratulations on the chat here. You may want to read through it, Jeremiah.
Oh.
Thanks, everybody.